So I'm out here in Pukenui forest, which is kind of nestled in the heart of Whangarei city. So we've come a little bit further inland for this one, so hopefully we find a few new species today. So Pukenui forest, I'm currently kind of standing in this, well, it looks like it's Taraire dominant forest, and yeah, it's about 2,000 hectares of native bush. So I'm quite excited to see what I can find here today. Well, this place is extremely diverse. I mean, we're starting out in a kind of a nikau grove here. There's tons of nikau palms around, Rapalostylis sapida, but let's just get into it because there's so many species here. We've got a Pukenui seedling here, Vitex lucens. This one here's a fun one. This is torapapa, or oak-leaved torapapa. You can see it's got kind of oak-shaped leaves. This is Alciosmia quercifolia. What else have we got? We've got a little Pseudopanax crassifolius seedling here. The lancewood, or horoeka. Let's see if we can get that to focus. Very hard to take photos or videos of this species because the leaves are just extremely long, linear leaves. There's a bigger one here actually that's probably, I mean, we're not going to succeed at getting a picture of it. Come on, there we go. Such a strange plant. It's hypothesized that it has leaves like this when it's young to avoid the browsing of moa. Once it gets past the height of a moa, which was around 3 meters tall, the leaves actually transitioned to a more regular looking leaf. But when they look like this, they probably weren't that tasty. They're very rigid and sharp and tough. Next up over here, we've got a tiny little guy here. This is Nertera dichondrifolia. I believe it's closely related to Coprosma species. Just a tiny little plant hiding amongst the leaf litter here. Very hairy leaves. And yeah, they produce little red berry-like fruit. And next to it we've got Asplenium flaccidum, or drooping spleenwort. This one's not drooping because it's kind of on the ground already, but otherwise they're usually a epiphytic species that would be drooping out of a tree. And next to it we've got the kidney fern, something or other, nephrophyllum or something, hymenophyllum nephro something. I'll have it on the screen, I can't remember, but you can definitely tell why it's called a kidney fern. It's not just kidney shaped, but even the veins going throughout it are very kidney-like. Very cool. And we have a Coprosma here. This is Coprosma areolata, I believe. Just jumping in a little bit later on, I was noticing a bunch of Coprosma arborea around the place. So I came back to this seedling that I incorrectly identified as Coprosma areolata, and looking at the stipules itself and comparing those stipules to images online, I believe this is actually Coprosma arborea, and I was wrong about the areolata. Gotta be careful with these things. Tiny little Riwariwa seedling. This is Knightia excelsa. It's in the Proteaceae family. And we've got tall mingi, Leucopogon fasciculatus. We've got some Mersenne australis, red matipo. We've got Asplenium oblongifolium. Right behind it there is a Mero seedling, Pectinopetes ferruginea. And we've got a little guy here. I believe this is the New Zealand jasmine, Parsonsia heterophylla. And we've got Mungi Bushman's mattress. This is a fern. We've got a Kohi here, Didymacheton spectabilis. Tons of ferns here. We've got the hound's tongue fern, Zealandia pustulata, and up here on this fallen log, the exposure is not great. That is Parosia eleagnifolia, the leatherleaf fern. Alright, so I found some of the New Zealand jasmine that's actually climbing, and it's climbing up a pigeonwood tree, which is Taraire arborea. And we've got bastard grass here, Carex uncinata, and the reason for it being called bastard grass is the seed heads, which I probably won't be able to show you very easily on camera, but the seeds of this have little hooks on the ends of them that will hook onto your leg hairs to help them with dispersal. Pretty clever. And we've got a flower over here as well. And we've also got a young tawa tree here, Belschmidia tawa. So we've got both Taraire and tawa growing in this forest. And more ferns. This one is Alsophila tricolour or silver fern. And we've got Blechnum filiforme as well, climbing up this tree here. That's another Taraire tree. And yeah, it gets quite high actually. You can see the stem climbing up the trunk, and you get more leaves further up. Quite a big cluster of leaves there actually. Okay, and we've got a seedling here just kind of on the path, and this is Caprosma lucida. It looks a lot like Caprosma robusta, but the main difference is that the midrib is actually raised on the top, so I can actually feel that midrib sticking out, and also the stipules are a little bit different as well. There's kind of no black part to the stipules, they're entirely green, but otherwise very similar to Caprosma robusta. So I've already showed you the Alciosmia quercifolia, the torapapa, and you may remember that it was called the oak-leaved torapapa, but it's also referred to as a mimic plant because this is the same species, but those leaves look entirely different, don't they? And if we look right beside it, we've actually got a Leucopogon fasciculatus, which has these kind of more narrow linear leaves, and that's looking a lot like the leaves on this torapapa growing right next to it. I don't really know how it kind of mimics the plants near it. Sometimes it looks more like a pigeon would, but yeah, pretty crazy. Here's an even better example of torapapa looking almost identical to a tall mingi mingi. That's pretty wild. The only giveaway is that there's like that reddish tinge. You see, especially where insects have eaten at the leaves, there's that reddish tinge around it. And another Caprosma species here. This is Caprosma autumnalis, the Kanono. It used to be Caprosma grandifolia because it has the largest leaves in the Caprosma genus. Okay, so we've got a Nestigious species here. I honestly don't really know which one it is. Probably Nestigious lanceolata, the white maire, but not 100% sure. So if you know, let me know in the comments. The leaves are opposite. You may notice that this looks like it's alternating leaves, but I did notice there are little leaf scars on here, so these were all opposite leaves, which continues up the stem here, still opposite up the top there. We've got a young Myrcene salicinea here. The common name or te reo name is toro. So yeah, this is in the Myrcene genus, which is the same as red matepo. You may think it looks nothing alike, but there are some similarities, kind of the spottings of the leaves and the red on the leaves as well, but otherwise extremely different looking. Alright, so we've got a young supplejack here, Ripogonum scandens, and you can see very distinctly it's got kind of these elbow-shaped petioles. And if you look at the leaves themselves, they actually have kind of like a secondary set of veins that start at the base of the leaf, and they go all the way along towards the tip, kind of near the margin. It's a little bit easier to see it on the underside here. You can see that basal secondary vein branching out, and that's a pretty good way to identify this species. It can be mistaken for Coriaria arborea, the tree tutu, but the key difference is that tree tutu has sessile leaves, so there's no petiole and no elbows. Okay, a couple more ferns here. You can see here it looks almost like a little miniature tree fern, which is exactly what this is actually called. It's a miniature tree fern, Diploblechnum fraseri. So pretty much just like a smaller version of one of these guys. That's a Cyathea or Alsophila tricolour silver fern, and this one is a miniature tree fern. And right next to our miniature tree fern we have another fern here. This is the crown fern. I think it's Piu Piu, and the scientific name is Lomeria discolor. Okay, so we've found ourselves our first orchid. This is the fleshy tree orchid, or Drymoanthus adversus. There aren't any flowers at the moment, but that's pretty cool. And there is another one kind of beginning to sprout out there as well. Well, here's a way better example of the Natera dichondrifolia. You can see there's a huge big mat of it covering the side of the path here. Alright, so I found another species of rata vine. I think in the last video I found Metrosideros perforata, and here we have Metrosideros fulgens, which is the scarlet rata vine. And speak of the devil, here is the Metrosideros perforata as well, growing on a Alsophila tricolour. And yet another fern. This one is Hymenophyllum demissum, or the drooping filmy fern. And we've got Kiki, Freycinetia banksii. Sometimes people get this mistaken for just like a small cabbage tree, but this one is a climber. It climbs up other plants usually. This one's on the ground. But a key way to tell the difference is that the leaves are actually toothed. So if you kind of rub your finger along the edge of the leaf, you'll feel it. And here's a bigger example of the Coprosma lucida. And when it's bigger, it is quite a bit different from Coprosma robusta. So got quite a lot longer leaves on this one. And we've got a Pseudopanax arboreus, the regular five finger. And we've got another species of Asplenium fern here. This is Asplenium polyodon, which is quite a cool looking fern. Alright, and we've got Mesipterus lanceolata here. Alright, so we've got a species from the Cunoniaceae family. It is either Pterophila silvicola, which is Torwai, or it could be Makamaka, which is Akama rosifolia. One of the key ways to tell the difference, when they're an adult tree, they're quite a lot different, but the seedlings are very similar. But these stipules at the base of these compound leaves is a key giveaway, but I don't remember off the top of my head which is which. I believe the narrower stipules are indicative of it being Torwai and not Makamaka. So this is probably a Torwai here. Would you look at this guy? Is that not the funkiest looking weevil you've ever seen? I'll be honest, it's not really moving. I don't know if it's actually alive still. Do I give it a tap and find out if it's living? Yes, okay, it is alive. It just doesn't like moving much. I don't actually know what species this is. I've never seen him before. And he's quite big. I'm just going to put my hand up beside him. He's not a small beetle. Very funky. I've spotted some tiny little Kahikatea seedlings growing here as well. There it is. Alright, and back to another Cunoniaceae. We looked at Pterophila silvicola before, the Torwai, which had the narrow stipules. And if we look at this one, you can see it's got a very broad stipule in the middle there. This one right here, that's a stipule, it's not a real leaf. So this one, I believe, is Makamaka, or Akama rosifolia. It looks almost exactly the same as Torwai when it's a seedling, despite being in an entirely different genus. Still the same family though, Cunoniaceae. But yeah, it's simply just that super broad stipule in the middle there. The rest of these are leaflets of the compound leaf. And I've also found a very interesting looking fungi On the underside it has pores that look like that. No idea what this is. Please let me know in the comments if I haven't already identified it and put it on the screen for you. But is that not really cool on the underside? It kind of just looks a bit gross on top, but the underside is pretty interesting. And some more mushrooms. This looks like a very old spent hakeka, the wood air fungus. And then over here, we've got quite an interesting looking thing, some kind of puffball. No idea what it is though. So again, please let me know. And yeah, if you're wondering why it's called a puffball, I'll show you. I'm just going to give this a bit of a tap, and it should... You see the puff? That's going straight on me. I better move out of the way. You never know if those spores are poisonous or not, or bad for you, so... But yeah, puffball. Again, no clue what species that is. Also got a great big rimu tree up here as well, Dicradium gabricinum. I haven't actually been looking up all that much. I'm kind of focusing on the little things on the ground, and probably missed quite a few canopy species, but regardless, we've seen a huge diversity of different species so far, so that's been quite fun. And I believe this is a tree fuchsia seedling, Fuchsia excorticata. So that's pretty cool. And we've got a Schefflera digitata seedling here. So that is the 7-finger patete. Different from the 5-finger Pseudopanax by having much floppier leaves. Pseudopanax leaves are coriaceous, whereas these ones are really bendy and quite floppy, and the serrated margin is much finer on this species as well. Here's one of my favourites. This is Carpodatus serratus, or marble leaf. Pretty cool little plant. Well, I should say cool little tree. It does grow into a small tree. So for that entire video I spent up on the ridgeline, or one of the ridgelines in Pukenui forest, and it was just so much diversity. I was starting to make my way down into this gully. I'm near a stream now, and I just realised that the diversity of this place has completely changed again. And this video will end up being far too long if I continue identifying the species down here as well. So I might have to finish up there, and I'm going to have to come back another day and spend it along this stream side. Even if I just walk along the bank of the stream, I reckon I'm going to find a whole bunch of new species. Like in front of me here I've got Parataniwha. There's an entire grove of king fern behind me, which is quite cool. And yeah, should be a good time. Hope you've enjoyed, and hopefully you've learnt a new species or two as well. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.